Taiwan South, we're meeting families cleaning up their flooded homes after being hit for the second time this typhoon season.
The presidential office says President Lai Ching-te has no plans for a Latin America trip, amid reports the US denied him a transit there. Relief along the Thailand-Cambodia border with a ceasefire after days of clashes. Plus, Israeli airstrikes continue in Gaza, despite earlier promises to pause during aid drops. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. Southern Taiwan is picking up the pieces after Tropical Storm Koumei unleashed torrents of rain, triggering floods and landslides. Many have been forced to evacuate and daily life has ground to a halt as schools and businesses shut down. Our reporter Irene Lin is near Tainan, the hardest hit area, and joins us live. Irene, what's the situation where you are?
Hi, Laurel. We're in Hobi Township in Tainan, in one of the most impacted areas in southern Taiwan by the tropical storm Koumei. Now, it has brought record-breaking rain just 3 weeks after Typhoon Denuclearization tore through southern Taiwan, ripping off roofs and causing traffic halts in the city. Now, the tropical storm has moved on, but this part of Taiwan is still seeing on and off rains, and the floodwater has receded in the past 24 hours, but the wreckage from the pouring rain and the flooding on Monday can still be seen throughout the city. Now, since this morning, about a dozen military men have come in to assist with the cleanup. We saw them picking up fallen branches and picking up leaves that are clogging the drains to prevent further flooding. But on private properties, the local residents are left to clean up their own flooded homes themselves. We've been talking to some of the local residents here and got to see how bad the damage was in their house. Take a look.
都直接冲过来了，都没办法。
什么时候发现的？
我大概差不多8点20到8点半左右就直接冲进来了，差不多12点左右才慢慢退出去了。一边退一边扫，一边退一边扫比较快啦，这样啦。因为今天轻轻下就差不多吧。
所以说就从旁边移出来，20年没有这种情形的，大概淹了将近到大腿。
Now, this is the second time this month that schools and work were suspended due to bad weather in southern Taiwan. We're seeing an increasingly unpredictable storm paths in this typhoon season. They're hitting parts of the west coast that are usually spared of the worst of storms.
Thanks, Irene. That was Irene Lin reporting from southern Taiwan. There's fresh scrutiny over US policy on Taiwan transits after reports that President Lai Ching-te's planned overseas trip has been delayed and that China could be involved. The presidential office says there were no travel plans, but international headlines are focusing on what might have changed. Rees Ayres has the latest.
President Lai Ching-te will not be travelling overseas anytime soon. That's the response from Taiwan's presidential office amid reports a diplomatic trip to Central and South America has been postponed, one that was widely expected to include transits in the United States.
The trip was never officially confirmed by the presidential office, but reports of conversations with several South and Central American officials pointed to a visit to diplomatic allies. That trip was also reported to have stopovers in New York and Texas. Now, some sources say it has been postponed, with the presidential office issuing a statement saying any travel plans will be announced once they're finalised, adding that due to storm recovery efforts, tariff talks and other regional developments, no trips are currently scheduled. There are reports from the Financial Times and Bloomberg quoting sources that say Donald Trump denied permission for Lai to transit in the States after objections raised by China, though the US State Department said that the US policy on stopovers by Taiwanese leaders has not changed. This comes as top US and Chinese officials are meeting in Stockholm for new trade talks. Former US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who angered China with her own trip to Taiwan in 2022, linked to one of those articles on her Facebook page with a message that reads, "It sends a dangerous signal that the United States can be bullied into silence when it comes to Taiwan." China openly discourages countries from allowing Taiwanese politicians to visit or even transit through them. At a press conference Tuesday morning, Taiwan's foreign ministry reiterated the presidential office's earlier comments about the trip, but added this when asked about rumours that the US had been bullied into denying Lai's transit by China.
不过我也要强调，就是说，事实上，台湾在做任何事情的时候，都会受到中国的抗议跟打压。那其实呢，我们应该要反问的是。中国政府它应该要思考如何在区域里面担任作为一个负责任的大国，怎么样去维持区域的和平稳定，而不是说在台海、在南海、在东海不时的制造升高危险紧张的情势。
It seems likely this will be just a delay to Lai's overseas trip and not a total cancellation. But given reports of the US trying to improve ties with China, there is a lingering uncertainty about if any future trip would be able to include a US stopover. Alex Chen, Ryan Wu and Rhys Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
For more on what President Lai's change of plans means for US-Taiwan ties, Cadence Kuranta spoke to Jia Ian Chong from the National University of Singapore.
So it was reported last month that President Lai would be making a visit to Latin American allies with a stopover in the U.S., though this wasn't ever confirmed by Taiwan's government. Then on Monday, the presidential office stated that Lai has no plans for an overseas trip because of typhoon recovery and ongoing tariff talks with the U.S. That stirred up a lot of debate in Taiwan, especially after the Financial Times reported that the U.S. had blocked Taiwan from making a stopover in New York due to objections from China. What is your take on all this, and why might Lai have decided to call off his trip?
So without much more information from Taiwan officially, a lot of what I have to say is going to be speculative, obviously. That said, I think we do have several things on the table that we should be considering. Firstly, a Lai transit or transit by a president of Taiwan through the US often will raise hackles in Beijing. And we know that the Trump administration is currently talking with Beijing about some sort of trade or tariff deal. So I suppose the Trump administration would like to avoid more complications than they already have. That's perhaps one consideration. And the other is for a lot of the visits that the Taiwan presidents have to Latin America and the Caribbean, often the key is to have some sort of stopover in the United States where they can meet with US politicians, where they can also have sufficient media exposure. So without that opportunity, I suppose it is possible to plan some sort of trip to Latin America. But without that exposure in the US, perhaps the Lai administration would figure that that the trip can be probably better timed.
Former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also criticized the Trump administration's reported move to deny the stopover in a post on Facebook, saying that she hoped it didn't signify a change in U.S. policy on Taiwan. What can you say about the state of U.S.-Taiwan relations right now? And do you think this suggests a change in ties or a change in U.S. policy on Taiwan?
So the U.S.-Taiwan relationship is, I would say, robust, even if unofficial. That said, on the Taiwan side, there is a lot of reason for unease because of the unpredictability of the Trump administration, unease because of the fact that we have the tariff negotiations between Taiwan and the United States hanging in the air, and a lot is at stake. Plus, there's that constant drumbeat of a sort of narrative of being suspicious about the United States that's in the background. So with these different kinds of elements in the mix, I guess Taiwan and people in Taiwan, media in Taiwan, will be looking at every little move and be trying to interpret what is going on. But ultimately, I think if you look at the trajectory, we don't see a big change as yet. There could be, but at least that's not apparent right now. It's about the patterns that emerge, not specific incidents.
That was Jia Ian Chong from the National University of Singapore. Taiwan is considering limiting semiconductor exports to South Africa after the country renamed Taiwan's liaison office to a commercial office, a move Taipei sees as a downgrade in its presence in the country.
外交部基于维护主权及国家尊严立场， 我们现在与相关部会研议反制措施，包括限制晶片输往南非。我们严正呼吁南非政府尽速与我磋商。
South Africa cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan in 1997, but allowed Taiwan to maintain an official presence in Pretoria under the name Taipei Liaison Office. Last year, South Africa asked Taiwan to move that office to Johannesburg. It then changed the name to the Taipei Commercial Office in May. Top US and Chinese officials have begun new trade talks in Sweden. The world's two largest economies are seeking to extend a delicate truce. Tariffs of more than 100% from both sides are set to resume on August 12th. The pair will focus on stabilizing relations after disputes escalated over issues including trade imbalances, industrial subsidies, and US export controls on advanced technology. The talks could also pave the way for a possible meeting between US President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping later this year. At least 30 people have died in and around Beijing as intense rainfall floods the area. Over 100 villages have lost electricity and several roads have been cut off. The extreme weather also triggered landslides in some areas. Around 80,000 people have been evacuated, with authorities airlifting people out and airdropping supplies. More rain is forecast for the area in the coming week. Gardening enthusiasts in India's cities are finding new ways to bring nature into people's homes and promote sustainable living in dense urban environments. Miriam Brunner tells us more.
India is among the countries most affected by rapid industrialization and climate change. It struggles with air pollution, rising temperatures, and topsoil erosion. Social inequalities are driving people out of rural areas and into sprawling urban centers, adding pressure on India's major cities, with some of the worst air quality levels in the world. It's an environment ripe for new solutions. Sustainability expert Kunal Jagdale sees urban gardening as an ideal way to decarbonize households.
It's an additional layer on your roof where it acts as an insulation to the heat that is being transferred inside the house. So it reduces, as I said, 5 to 7 degrees of Celsius, it will reduce heat that is coming inside the house. And apparently if heat is coming less, you will need lesser AC.
Based in Delhi, the world's second largest city, Mayank Sharma has turned his green thumb into a thriving business. He started his journey over a decade ago to cope with the death of his father, also a gardener. Now he has found success online, captivating over 300,000 followers on Instagram. He uses social media platforms to promote sustainability, educating viewers on how to transform their rooftops into mini gardens.
Imagine a Delhi where an aircraft lands or a drone flies by and there's no terrace which is not green, right? Which is not having fruit plants, vegetable plants. That'll be beautiful, right? And that's the idea behind all of this.
But gardening isn't just about living sustainably. As Mayank Sharma's story shows, it can also be a tool for healing. The founder of a business called The Greenish Affair, Aditi Qatar, shares how greenery helped her deal with mental health struggles and hopes to inspire others to do the same.
People actually started getting plants home because they come with the least responsibility as compared to pets and kids. So I started my journey like that only because I used to find my happiness here. I used to share it with the people, and I wanted people to know that how plants can actually help you overcome your stress or anxiety, or in my case it was postpartum depression.
Terrace by terrace, roof by roof, these people are working to make urban Indian households more sustainable, inspiring others to add a touch of green to concrete spaces, improving their cities and their mental well-being. Joseph Orr and Miriam Brunner for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, towering above the forest for over a century, Taiwan's tallest Chinaberry tree stands strong and deeply rooted.
Thank you for sharing our passion for food and Taiwan. Veggie Island explores the vibrant world of plant-based cuisine.
This is amazing.
While Taiwan on the Rocks uncovers the stories and craftsmanship behind every sip.
Have you ever tried Taiwanese beer?
Are you ready to taste even more of Taiwan?
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world, charted by the freest country in Asia.
Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Thailand and Cambodia have reached a ceasefire after days of fighting on their border killed dozens. Displaced people on both sides are happy to hear the news, but accusations of ceasefire violations are already raising doubts about how long the peace can last. John Van Trieste reports.
With this handshake, fierce border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia are set to stop. The leaders of the two countries are face-to-face next to the mediator, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, and they've agreed to a ceasefire without conditions from midnight Monday. But it could be a shaky peace, with Thailand already accusing Cambodia of continued attacks up until Tuesday morning, accusations Cambodia rejects. During the ceasefire talks, China urged a quick truce. And with that truce now settled, U.S. President Donald Trump has offered his congratulations. The biggest relief, though, is along the Thai-Cambodian border. At least 36 people are dead and more than 300,000 people displaced on both sides. They've had to take shelter wherever they can find it, including in makeshift camps like this one on the Cambodian side. Here, there is hope.
This is really good news for us. I think all the people will be very happy with this announcement.
But also skepticism.
I will wait and see. Despite the ceasefire, I won't go tomorrow. I have to wait until the fighting really stops, so I think I will go back the day after tomorrow.
Across the border in Thailand, it's the same story of joy mixed with suspicion.
I'm happy about that and feeling a bit relieved. We normal people who had to leave home will all be happy to be able to go back home. We miss our home.
I don't believe Cambodia, because I don't think they would easily give up. We would have demanded some conditions for a ceasefire, and I don't think they would have accepted and so easily agreed with us.
Further talks between the two sides are set for Tuesday, as displaced people get ready to head home. And the foreign and defense ministers of Thailand, Cambodia, and Malaysia are supposed to come up with a way to make sure the peace holds in the long run and locals can live in safety. But this isn't the first time border tensions have flared up. And with those tensions still high, a lasting truce is far from guaranteed. Joseph Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
US President Donald Trump has urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to take steps to end the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting. It's 50 days. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made.
Trump has threatened more sanctions on Russia, as well as the countries that buy Russian exports, in an effort to bring peace to Ukraine. Moscow did not immediately comment, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the US move.
І ми неодноразово говорили, і всі партнери це знають, що санкції – це ключовий елемент. Росія зважає на санкції, зважає на такі втрати, мир завдяки силі можливий. Україна, як і завжди, готова максимально продуктивно працювати з Америкою. Працювати з президентом Трампом заради того, щоб закінчити цю війну достойно і тривалим миром.
In the 3.5 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. Russia has been increasingly targeting civilians with drone and missile strikes. Just days after Israel announced daily pauses in attacks on Gaza to allow aid drops, it's resuming airstrikes on the enclave. Tiffany Wong has the latest.
Aid drops over Gaza.
long awaited, but not enough for the 500,000 people approaching famine-like conditions as Israel's war on the enclave continues. On Sunday, after mounting international pressure, Israel announced that it would allow temporary pauses in fighting each day to make room for aid drops. Israel says it must clear deliveries to make sure aid is not given to Hamas. But at the same time, Israel has continued airstrikes on Gaza, killing nearly 100 people since its announcement, including some seeking aid.
They should coordinate so each one gets it based on their names to send people messages. That way, no one gets hurt and people get the aid in a safe way and with respect instead of us going and getting humiliated. Why should we go to the aid and get humiliated? Why? This is humiliation also.
The future of the enclave and the 2 million displaced Palestinians remains unclear as negotiations between Israel and Hamas for a hostage deal and ceasefire fell through again last week. U.S. President Donald Trump said that he advised Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to change strategies when dealing with Hamas.
Hamas has become very difficult to deal with in the last couple of days because they don't want to give up these last 20, because they think as long as we have them, they have protection. But I don't think it can work that way. So I'm speaking to Bibi Netanyahu, and we are coming up with various plans.
At the same meeting, Trump also said that the U.S. would spend more on food aid to Gaza, seeming to contradict Netanyahu's claims that there is no starvation in the enclave. Meanwhile, the United Nations resumed calls for a two-state solution between Israel and a Palestinian state.
We must work on the ways and means to go from the end of the war in Gaza to the end of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict at a time when this war is jeopardizing the stability and security of the entire region.
The U.S. and Israeli representatives to the UN boycotted that meeting. With Israel's biggest ally standing by its side despite humanitarian concerns and ceasefire negotiations repeatedly falling through, an end to the war seems far away. And as the death toll in Gaza approaches 60,000 nearly 2 years in, it's unclear how much more the people of Gaza can endure. Devon Tsai and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
North Korea says it is unwilling to give up its nuclear weapons. Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, has dismissed a US push to resume denuclearization talks. She said relations between her brother and US President Donald Trump are not bad, but added that using the personal relationship to discuss denuclearization would be, quote, a mockery. Trump and Kim met in 2018 and 2019. North Korea has ramped up nuclear weapons testing in recent years. China berry trees in Taiwan can soar to impressive heights and live for over a century. But because their name in Taiwanese Taigi sounds like the word for sorrow, many of these trees have been cut down. Rick Lowett went to the country's tallest surviving China berry and reports on its fight for survival.
A majestic but silent giant towers over this small village in Taiwan's central mountain range. Standing at over 30 meters tall is the country's largest China berry tree. For about 140 years, it's been a fixture of daily life here in Guanghua, dropping its leaves each winter and flowering in purple blooms each spring.
其实那个也是有一个代表性啦，代表就是说我们这边就是的空气好，然后这水质好。
This tree is a rarity. In Taiwanese Taigi, China berry is called Kolian, a name that sounds like the word for sorrow and bitterness. And for that reason, many in Taiwan cut down trees like this. But here in Guanghua, one survived, and as the tree reaches new heights, so do concerns about its health. Locals have called in the experts. Rebecca Xu is Taiwan's most renowned tree scientist, dedicating decades to finding and protecting Taiwan's tallest trees. On her first visit to Guanghua, Xu climbed to the top of the tree and was relieved to give Taiwan's tallest China berry a clean bill of health.
如果这棵树它生病了，然后这边的人一定会被影响啊，你也知道心理会影响身体嘛，对，所以我觉得这个 就是有这样 symbol 是很 lucky 的，就不是每个村子都有这样。
Taiwan's ancient trees are under pressure. With rising temperatures and an increasingly erratic typhoon season, trees like this one are more vulnerable than ever. And with 60% of Taiwan's land covered in forest, Xu can't do this alone. She's now enlisting the help of people like Zai Yao, a member of the indigenous Zhou group who grew up just across the valley from Guanghua. He's told the village he'll help care for their tree, and says the traditions of his people who've lived in these mountains for thousands of years guides his work in the forest.
其实州主就是跟环境其实是环境，包括说，我们看到的是周围的东西，从树、山、河川都是很有联系，因为那就是我们的生活。 多吃哦。
As the experts scale its branches, this tree's enduring presence has also become like a bridge, connecting community, science and age-old traditions. Its future, standing tall as a guardian over this valley, depends not only on its strong roots in this land, but also its strong roots in its people. Luffy Li, Peachy Zhuang and Rick Lowett in Jiayi County for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, let's head to Sarajevo to explore the city's murals and graffiti. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next time.